Well, good morning. I've been reflecting on things that some of the things that Katie was saying. Someone this morning asked me what I did, and when I said that I lived on my wits, I think I interpret that as having a portfolio career. Anyway, today what I want to talk to you about is what we're calling this concept of social feedback. And that's the idea of using online social media-like systems in order to promote personal development by encouraging the giving and receiving of feedback. And what I'd like to do is sort of explain some of the ideas and some of the research and elements that drive this, explain to you and share some of the work that myself and my colleagues have been doing, and then finish off just looking at where we think this is going, what the opportunities are, perhaps what some of the downsides are as we go forwards. So, who here doesn't use social media? Hands up. Okay, well that's pretty reasonable. So, fair to say that increasingly, we all, or the vast majority, use some form of online social media, whether it be one of the networks like Facebook, LinkedIn, or so on, whether we are sharing other bits of content and commenting on things in YouTube and Flickr or any other platform that we quite like. And what we're noticing is that obviously there's people are using that, but what we're also noticing is people are increasingly having what I call intimate conversations. What I mean is those sort of difficult conversations, the sort of conversations that perhaps traditionally have shied away from. I was reading a stream of actually some comments on a YouTube video the other day where someone was saying, "Well, I watched this clip and it made me feel better because, my parents are going through a divorce." And then this whole stream of other stuff came from these other users, sort of giving them advice and support to complete strangers. So, particularly the younger you are, I think increasingly the intimacy of the conversations and exchanges that people are willing to have online are increasing. From an organisational point of view, what we're noticing is that organisations are, they're trying to support their people in their personal development, and they're doing sort of things at the sort of top end. They're sending them off on courses, they're giving them fantastic executive coaches, they're sending them to business schools, they're perhaps giving them sort of technical training and functional training that's completely aligned to what they're doing. But increasingly, at the bottom of this pyramid here, the tools are now out there for us to learn almost anything. You can, if you've got a question in your head or you want to learn about a particular topic, you can Google it. You can get some great materials and resources out there. Not only that, is you can sort of socialise your learning in terms of you can ask questions to your people in your network. Has anybody ever done this before? Can anybody point me in the right direction? And again, increasingly, people are doing that. So the idea of sort of social feedback concept is perhaps to be in this middle area where we're sort of mashing up the sort of the content, the methodologies, the good practice, the sort of research that sort of goes into the top end, and then sort of mashing that together with the ideas and the ways that we're working with sort of social media like content. But how do we know that this idea of sharing stuff in a network is actually going to improve your chances of developing as an individual? Well, it turns out there's all sorts of research out there, and particularly a particularly large study by Goldsmith and Morgan, where they took, nothing to do with online, these are real interventions, they looked at 11,000 coaching interventions, where basically the delegate gathered some feedback from a network, from the people around them. They interpreted that feedback. They then chose a goal, something they wanted to work on, something they wanted to improve on. They then socialised that goal. They basically shared that goal with the people around them. And then what Morgan Goldsmith then did was that they then came back after a period of time, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was, and looked at the relative improvement on that chosen development goal, specifically looking at the levels of peer follow-up that person had enjoyed. And what you can see here is There's the middle bit there is a perceived change on this development goal. And you can see that after sort of 8 weeks, if the co-worker did no follow-up, there was a small improvement, a small shift over to the right. But as you would expect, perhaps it wasn't as much as it could have been. But then they looked at a group who'd had a little follow-up, and of course it's moved a little bit further to the right. Some follow-up, it's going over in the right direction. Frequent follow-up, even further on, until you get to this consistent and periodic follow-up, where you get no great surprise, you get the best possible improvement in that development goal. And what we know about technology is, unlike human beings, it's really good. Technology is really good at consistent and periodic because you can program it to do these things. So you can see that there's some hard evidence here to show that this sort of idea might work. So about 18 months ago, my colleagues and I got together and we asked ourselves the question, well, what if we could replicate that kind of environment that study was looking at? What if we could gather information from an individual's network, their peers, people they work with, people they work for, and so on. What if we could then present that information in a way they could make sense of it, and perhaps give them some guidance and coaching to enable them to choose a development goal. Then, importantly, once they've chosen that goal, to then share that with the network, the people who'd already given them the feedback, and then support that network with comments and suggestions to enable that consistent and periodic follow-up. Before we started, we sort of thought about what such a system should include, and what sort of core principles that perhaps we should follow. And the first sort of principle that we decided was really important was it needs to, we're talking about quite, as we say, intimate sort of personal conversations, and it's probably not appropriate unless you're have a particular personality type where you want to share everything. It's not appropriate to sort of broadcast it on Facebook that you're working on building your confidence. Okay, maybe that's not what you really want to do. So with this principle of being the individuals, the delegates, and indeed the network around you can opt in and control whether they're involved in this. So it shouldn't be a burden on the people who are being asked to give feedback, but equally the person who's sharing this quite intimate part of their lives. It's important that they feel that they are in control. The other next principle we looked at is that if we're going to use this technology to help this consistent and periodic feedback, that the communication between the system and the individual needs to be supportive. So we need to give some ongoing coaching to the delegate. We need to give some help and support to the network to tell them what to look for. Give them some hints and tips so they can actually they can focus their feedback and their help specifically to that individual and specifically to the development goal that they've got. Whilst it's a technology solution, we shouldn't be hung up about the channel necessarily. Human beings take information and communicate. We've got a whole range of different preferences, and clearly, face-to-face is really important, going on the phone. So not being hung up on the technology. So in the system we wanted to create, we wanted to, of course, do it by email and online, but equally, encourage people to have those face-to-face conversations, to grab people around the coffee machine, to send carrier pigeons, I don't care, but just have those sort of feedback conversations. And the last principle we looked at was this system needs to be able to help people choose their goals. So we need to right at the beginning, gather objective feedback on what people are doing. So the choice of methodology, of framework, if you like, in order to give some objective feedback to then enable us to be supportive. So if we know with the concept, the construct that we're looking at, the behaviour that we're looking at, we can then be supportive in the advice that we give people. So we chose a well-respected behavioural framework. So for the first system we developed, it's a behavioural framework looking at people's behaviour, with a whole body of work behind it that we know correlates to superior performance, and more importantly, we know that it's particularly important in what we're calling the new world of work, in terms of things that are ever changing and increasingly volatile. So what have we done? Well, We've got a system that's up and running already, so we are gathering. We get people to nominate their network. We then send invitations out to this network, asking them to fill out questionnaires. I'm sure some of you have done 360 style assessments in the past, are very similar to that. We then gather this information together. We use very clever algorithms to compare this data we get against the framework that we're using to underpin it. That then produces a profile. The people can then sort of drill down into that, and they can get some coaching for the particular behaviour that they're interested in, the particular level that they're at, and then they're encouraged to choose a development goal, which they then sort of select from a list. And that's all working. Now what we've got in sort of our test harness then is this next stage where people are at the end of that process said, right, I'm going to work on my influence or whatever the goal is going to be. It then says, look, when you got this feedback from Fred, they very kindly offered to give you some ongoing feedback. Would you like to share your goal with them? And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And they choose the person that they want to, the people they want to share it. And those people then get sent emails in this first instance, which says, you very kindly gave John Smith, always John Smith, isn't it? Very kindly gave John some feedback. He's chosen to work on whatever it might be. You can help him by looking out for X, Y, and Z. That's really good. Can you be supportive? You can sort of take him to one side, pass him on the back, say, job well done, send him a quick note, or indeed post some feedback on our system. Equally importantly, if you see him doing any behaviour that's kind of eroding the thing that he's trying to work on that really he shouldn't be doing, he really wants to know. So it's okay if you see any of these things to take him to one side and steer him in the right direction. Ultimately, we've got a system that works and it says beta on the top there, but it basically is a way of effectively your main sort of homepage, your profile page, as you would have in Facebook, where you can see the recent feedback posts. You can give and receive feedback to others. You can retest yourself and see whether you've improved on your development goal over time, and look at your reports. And that's we're making it all look pretty at the moment, so it looks a bit better than that in the real system. So where are we going with all this? Well. We're looking at using other platforms. So you've got to have a mobile web app, haven't you? So we're looking at doing that. But more importantly, I think that there's clever things that you can do, because you can look at the whole network. You can look at the communication that's going across this network, and perhaps get some interesting information about what's going on in the organisation. What are the sort of things that people are having feedback conversations about? There's some data to be looked at there. Additionally, you could perhaps look at the people who are pivotal in giving people feedback. Perhaps they are. There might be some people who are giving lots of feedback, lots of useful feedback, and that's interesting to know. You might even want to reward it. Many of us have coaching and mentoring as actually a target, a goal that we're set by our organisation. Well, here's a way of actually tracking that. But then, of course, people might want to game the system. They might want to just give feedback, and it might be any old feedback. Well, again, we can use the technology ideas. You could adopt sort of an eBay-like principle where not only do you receive feedback from other people, you can rate how useful that feedback has been. So, give them a number of stars. So, there's all sorts of ideas we can look at. Of course, there's some downsides. Those of you who already used 360 feedback will know that there's this concept of rater fatigue. So people getting too many invitations, too many emails to do things. So again, with this opt-in principle, we need to enable people to switch stuff on and off. But we can be smarter than that as well, and we can use algorithms in the technology, a bit like Facebook does to, you don't get every single post that every single person in your Facebook network sends you. But we can have some sort of relevancy algorithm that actually only bothers a certain number of people if they've already got a lot of feedback to give to people. So we think that there's a whole bunch of things that can be done. It's not just limited to behaviour. We're also looking at other dimensions of human performance. So, for example, we've already got a prototype, Emotional Intelligence 360, which is actually looking at not just one of the problems with normal sort of emotional intelligence type diagnostic tools is it asks you what you do. But if you've got really low self-awareness, okay, then everything else is meaningless. But if you actually start using the network to say, how did this person make you feel? That's valid data. So we've got some ideas about actually stretching it into other parts of other dimensions of human performance. So we think our system and other systems like it will increasingly be important. They're fantastic at maintaining that periodic and consistent feedback that we think, or we know that helps people improve their performance. From an organisational perspective, it will help create a developmental culture because you're constantly encouraging people to have those conversations. And we think that our dream is that people will be using these type of systems as readily as they are sharing a joke, inviting people on Facebook to have a drink, or anything else that we use social media for. Over time, we think these systems will develop. We hope we're in the forefront of that. And we very much hope that one day some of you will be using the systems that we're developing. Thank you very much.